This is the Danish flag, and I have a question. Are Danes Baltic Vikings, or are the Baltic Vikings low-budget Danes? Let me know in the comments below. But actually, that's not what I wanted to ask. What I wanted to ask was, is the Danish flag really the oldest in the world? Because if you listen to the story, this flag isn't just old, it's miraculous. It didn't evolve from a royal coat of arms, it didn't even emerge through centuries of heraldry, but it literally fell from the sky. Well, in today's video, let's find out more about this flag. There are countless stories online about how the Danish flag came to be, most of them tracing back to a legend from the year 1219. Although it should be mentioned that we only have an account of this dating from 1523, the account given by Christian Pedersen. Now, this is a very interesting story, and let's look back at Danish history to understand a bit more about where the flag came from. We all know that Harald Bluetooth, around 965, erected two large gelling stones in which he claimed to have united Denmark, and converted them. And several centuries later, by 1191, the once pagan Danes were now fully Christianized and going on crusade themselves. Of course, they weren't going all the way to the lands of the Holy Roman Empire, at least not yet. For now, they were simply crossing the Baltic Sea, into the region we know today as Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Today, Denmark still has a surprising number of pagans. In the early 1200s, the Danes were ruled over by King Valdemar II. His kingdom was vast, much larger than modern Denmark, reaching into areas that are today Sweden and Germany, and stretching along the southern coast of the Baltic Sea. At this time, the main effort to convert the peoples of the Baltic was led by German-speaking knights, who had organized themselves into a group called the Livonian Order. By the early 13th century, however, they were struggling against the pagans in the Baltic states. So they asked Pope Honorius III to invite King Valdemar II of Denmark to lead their campaign, bringing a fresh Danish army to conquer the Baltic lands and convert the people to Christianity. Pope Honorius elevated Valdemar's campaign into a full-blown crusade against the inhabitants of the Baltic lands, making it one of the Northern Crusades. It began in 1219, when a large Danish fleet sailed to what is now Estonia. At the site of present-day Tallinn, there stood a fortress built by the native people. Here, the Danes attempted to convert the locals, who at first seemed receptive. A great feast was arranged on the hilltop, and all appeared to be going well, until the pagans suddenly drew their weapons and ambushed the unsuspecting Christians. And that's when the battle began. The Danes had help in the form of Bishop Sunesson. As the Estonians attacked, he lifted his arms in prayer, and each time he did, the Danes found new courage and surged forward to meet the enemy head-on. But Sunesson was an elderly man, and his arms grew tired. When they fell, the Estonians gained the upper hand, killing the Danes and pushing them toward the edge of a cliff. Fearing disaster, Sunesson and King Valdemar prayed for a sign from the Lord. And at that very moment, when all seemed lost, a miraculous banner descended from the sky, a red field with a white cross. The banner fell, and Valdemar picked it up. Suddenly, he felt a surge of power, knowing he could defeat the enemy. He and his men rallied and fought bravely, and the Estonians were defeated. That day marked a victory for the Christian cause in the crusade, as the Danes surged forward under their new banner, the red and white flag we now know as the Danish flag. In Danish, it is called the Dannebrog. This is the origin story attributed to it, and ever since it has remained the flag associated with the Danish kingdom and the Danish people. The battle that came to be known as the Battle of Lindenisse is still much debated, and, as I mentioned, the account we have comes from a much later time. It is also sometimes called the Battle of Valdemar, named after the Danish king. An interesting side note is that this battle was actually fought at the site of present-day Tallinn, the capital of Estonia. In 2023, I visited Tallinn on vacation with my family, and our favourite spot was Toompea Castle. At the top, there is a special place commemorating an absolute unit of a Danish king, complete with a remarkable sword, and, of course, the shield. This is where the Dannebrog, the Danish flag, is said to have fallen from the sky. Imagine the scene, not the cobblestone walls we see today, but a hill, probably wooded. As the battle raged against the Danes, the red flag with the white cross descended from the sky, guiding Valdemar and his men to victory. At the site, inscriptions are displayed in several languages. First in Estonian, then in English for tourists, in Danish for the Danes, and finally in Russian, spoken by roughly a third of Estonia's population. A fun aside I learned is that the name Tallinn actually comes from this event and its Danish history. Tallinn is a contraction of the older Estonian name Taanilinna. Now, Estonian is a Finnic language, so it can be difficult to understand or even try to pronounce, but the etymology is fascinating. It literally means Danish fortress. In modern Estonian, linna or linn means city, but originally, and still in Finnish, the word linn means fortress. It's similar to the Germanic word burg or the English borough, which originally referred to a fortress rather than a city. The Taani part, of course, refers to Denmark. So Taanilinna literally means Danish fortress, which over time was contracted to Tallinn. Interestingly, the name of the Battle of Lindenice is related. It's essentially the same name, but switched around. Fortress of the Danes, just expressed across two languages. So I thought that was really interesting, something I hadn't realized before, connecting the dots in this story. But how much of it is actually true? Did a Danish flag really fall from the sky in the middle of the battle? Probably not. If you're a skeptic like me, that seems rather unlikely. Yet there is likely some truth to the idea that this banner became associated with the Danes while they were on crusade in the eastern Baltic. Several other theories have been proposed, discussed by Danish historians during the National Romantic period of the 19th and 20th centuries. One of them, Adolf Dietler Jürgensen, argued that the story actually goes back to 1218. According to him, the banner belonged to Bishop Theodoric, who had long advocated Danish involvement in these Eastern Crusades. It may have originally been the banner of the Knights Hospitaller, but since the Danes were fighting alongside them, the banner became associated with the Danes, and the association stuck. Another theory, put forward by Lauritz Peter Fabricius, suggests that the banner does not date back to the Battle of Lindenice in 1219, but rather to the Battle of Fellin in 1208. There, it was said to belong to an archbishop, and later became confused with the Danes. A related theory, proposed by Helga Brunn, situates this story within a broader medieval trope: the appearance of flags or symbols, especially crosses, in the sky before decisive battles, guiding people to victory. Examples include the Battle of the Milvian Bridge and the Battle of Alcazar in Spain in 1217. This is something we see frequently during the Middle Ages, so it's quite possible that one or more of these theories is true. That the white cross on a red background became associated with the Danes because of the Hospitallers or other archbishops' banners used in the Crusades, and over time merged with a legendary story of a cross appearing in the sky. The first attested use of the Danish flag dates back to around the mid-14th century. For example, a book produced in the modern-day Netherlands shows Denmark using both the Danish coat of arms, which has a fascinating Frisian connection, and the white cross on a red background. This demonstrates that, already about a century after the purported events, the flag was in use, making it quite old. From 1398, we have the first Danish example on a seal. In the centre, we see a lion holding an axe, a symbol reminiscent of Norway, while in its claws it holds a flag with a cross. We presume this represents Denmark. Ever since, this has been the flag of Denmark, the one we recognise today. This is an incredibly important moment in history, as the Danish flag likely inspired the flags of Sweden, Finland, Norway, Iceland, the Faroe Islands, and several other places. Of course, it's also interesting to note that the Danish flag features a Nordic cross, offset slightly rather than centered. The Danish flag is, in fact, the oldest continuously used flag in the world. So, I hope you found this video interesting. Not many people know the full story behind the Danish flag and its origins, but it's a fascinating tale nonetheless. Thank you very much for watching. I've got a few more videos planned for the near future, which should be exciting. I really appreciate everyone who's watching, giving a thumbs up, or sharing this video with friends who might enjoy it too. Thank you again for watching. I've been Kelvin, and this has been The History.